I have children. I have a 19-year-old son. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old. And, my thing is go to parties, be social, but why get drunk?
Because they're going to do it anyway, aren't they?
No, why? That's my point. See, you're one of the parents that have
made the assumption
and
right.
waved the flag that
that's going to happen.
It's going to happen. But
right.
Why?
Yeah.
Why assume that? And why not do things to prevent it?
Welcome to this classic episode of Spartan Up Podcast. Today, we're talking about addiction, and we're pulling clips from 3 really powerful past interviews about the subject. You'll hear from Christopher Herren, former Denver Nuggets and Boston Celtics basketball player and founder of the Herren Project; Joe Polish, known as one of the most connected people in the world, founder of the Genius Networks, but also founder of Genius Recovery and a recovered addict himself. And finally, Ray Morvan, who Colonel Nye spoke to on the sidelines of the death race in Pittsfield, Vermont. As you listen, look for the through lines. Look for the common pieces that all 3 of these guests discuss about addiction and about hope. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Superbeats Heart Chews. Right now, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeats.com/Spartan. Christopher Herren asks a really important question. We focus so much on recovery from addiction, but not enough on the beginnings of addiction. Why does addiction happen? Why do we allow it to begin? What do we expect from young people, and what do we take for granted?
Yeah, I think when it comes to addiction, we put so much emphasis on how it ended rather than why it began.
Right.
That's the scariest thing about it for me and for millions of people out there. Nobody knows who has it. I sure didn't. There wasn't my intentions to shoot heroin for 10 years when I drank my first beer at 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
But that's the way it went for me. So my addiction was definitely a huge factor in, the reason why my success and my career wasn't sustainable.
You needed Spartan tea.
Spartan tea.
So, I have 2 young boys. I have 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. And I listen to that and I think, how do I avoid that from how do I prevent that from happening?
I think, one of the missing things is just wellness in general. I mean, if you look at our curriculum, the way we teach our children, it's so academic centric, like instead of social and emotional growth and being wellness aware. I don't think we challenge our kids enough. I think we've given in to the way their high school years are going to be laid out to them.
What would be your way? I mean, going through what you went through, how would you do it?
I have children. I have a 19-year-old son. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old. And, my thing is go to parties, be social, but why get drunk? I want my son and my daughter to be totally aware of how they feel and work through it rather than, mask it with alcohol at 16.
Sure. I was thinking to tell me if this is a crazy idea, stupid idea, because you'd have experience. You want me to take that tea?
Yeah,
it seems
do.
unbalanced in your hand. I was thinking of taking them like when they're 14, 15 in the woods, the 2 boys, and having like a couple of cases of cigarettes and all kinds of alcohol and get them completely sick.
Right. No, bad idea.
Bad idea? It doesn't work?
No. It might. That's your risk that you have to take.
Because they're going to do it anyway, aren't they?
No, why? That's my point. See, you're one of the parents that have
made the assumption
and
right.
waved the flag that
that's going to happen.
It's going to happen. But
right.
Why?
Yeah.
Why assume that? And why not do things to prevent it? And the thing is, I do 200 plus speaking engagements a year. And parents, when kids come home drunk, their first question is, who are you with? Where'd you get it? What house hosted it? Instead of why.
Right.
Why not ask why?
And you think your 19-year-old has been pretty straight?
He has. He's been great. Doesn't mean he never will.
Right.
But it's a lifestyle he's chosen. He was unfortunate to be, to grow up in my addiction. He was 9 when I got sober. So I think he has a healthy fear. I think he's well aware that addiction runs in our family. But more importantly is just to have that social awareness. Like, I don't need this.
Right.
You know? What?
I was that way. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I always wanted to be in control. I think I saw the movie The Godfather growing up, and there was no drugs allowed, and that kind of felt badass in a way. Like, so I just stayed away from it.
And I think we need to, you know, not so much Godfather-ish, but we need to redirect the way our kids think about it, and as well as adults. I think, you know, it all begins in a basement.
Yeah.
You know, it all begins with the red Solo cup. It all begins at a keg party at 13, 14, 15.
We got to do burpees instead of beer.
Totally.
But how do you make it cool, right?
I don't think we give the kids who don't enough credit. You know, they're like kind of like the silent voice in the background.
Yeah.
You know, there's like really no social awareness, and we don't give them enough credit for what they do. Like, listen, I don't find anything normal about a 15-year-old girl who is going probably through the most awkward years of her life, getting drunk in a basement with a bunch of kids she's known since she was 5.
Right.
Like, if you think that's not, I don't think that's normal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we need to be better at that. We need to inspire our kids and give them a voice in how they feel, and give them a platform where they can present and be transparent and open. I think that's what we need.
Zach Evanesh introduces this conversation with Joe Polish and Joe De Sena. Joe Polish is super successful. In fact, this interview was recorded in his beautiful studio in his offices in Arizona. He's the founder of the Genius Network, but also of his passion project, Genius Recovery.
This interview is with Joe Polish. You know Joe.
Yes.
You'd said about the most well-connected guy you've ever met.
That's what he is. He's known as being a connector. If you want to meet somebody, you need to get in touch with Joe. And he has overcome some, amazing life challenges. And the stuff he's doing now is truly transformational. I think this could be one of the most inspiring Spartan Up Podcast episodes ever.
Awesome.
Pressure is on.
Let's do it.
I found drugs, and I started, getting high every day, smoking pot. Then I started, speed, and then snorting crystal meth and snorting cocaine, and then eventually freebasing, and I was a wreck, and I nearly died. I mean, I weighed 105 pounds at my worst state when I was 18 years old. So if you can imagine a 5'10" male that's 18 years old, weighs 100, it's pretty skinny. And that was at my worst state. And so, but on average, so I didn't lift weights, I didn't exercise.
How did somebody come out of that?
I removed myself from my environment. I mean, literally,
You woke up one day and you said this, because that's a hard thing to get out of, right?
I had a roommate that was living with me and my brother, who my brother's 4.5 years older than me, and he busted into the apartment that we were living in. Like, he literally just opened the door with a can of lighter fluid, losing his mind, and I was there with one of my friends watching TV in this small living room in this apartment complex, and he was just spraying lighter fluid everywhere over me, my friend. I mean, I had lighter fluid dripping off my eyebrows. I mean, it's all happened in like a few seconds.
But he was out of his mind. This wasn't to straighten you out. This was...
He was high.
Got it.
And he showed up high as shit, and he was freaking out, and he pulled out a match. He's like, I'm going to fucking torch this place. And I'm like talking him down, put it down. And like, that was it. I have got to get the hell out of here or I'm going to die. And I was in my worst state, and I literally packed up my pickup truck, and I drove to New Mexico and lived in a trailer for 2 years and got sober. I removed myself from all my friends, all access to drugs. I ended up getting a job selling gym memberships after a few months.
You're 20 years old then?
I was like
19,
late, 18, 19 years old, yeah. And so I ended up moving back when I was, almost 22 years old. But I'd gotten sober, and I started exercise. But here's what happened. When I moved to New Mexico, I got away from the environment, and every day I had to literally take aspirin or Tylenol just because the headaches and the withdrawals were intense, and it was grueling.
What percentage of people can do it cold turkey like that?
It depends on that's a tough question to answer from this standpoint. Is 20% of all Vietnam vets were shooting heroin during Vietnam, and the reason is because there were stricter laws on marijuana than there was on heroin. And when most of them came back and they weren't around the crazy environment of war, they just quit on their own. And so this whole notion that it hijacks the brain, well, it depends on the environment. If you shift the environment and there's no trauma attached to the person, and I've learned a lot of this through my friend Gabor Mate, who's considered one of the top addiction doctors in the world, is that a lot of people, if they don't have trauma in their childhood and they just happen to get into a binge and excess, you know, like some people go to Vegas and they, you know, hire hookers and they drink excessively and do drugs and they come back and they don't have this compulsion to do it again. Other people can't stop.
Sure.
So what is the not being able to stop part? It's not about the drugs per se, it's about the stress, it's about the biochemistry of the person. So people that are full-blown addicts, very few. Without a community, without 12-step groups, without you know, getting into the body, without doing trauma work, without learning how to breathe, without changing your diet, I mean, it's very rare. That's why there's such a huge relapse rate for people going through rehab centers and stuff. And again, I know more than the average bear about
Sounds
addiction,
like it,
and
yeah.
I've done a lot of
How many addicts do you know the number of how many addicts in the United States?
Well, it depends on the addiction. I mean,
Right.
if I mean,
Well, almost all of us are addicted to something.
well,
Right?
maybe. I've heard that a lot, and a lot of people believe we're all addicted to something. The way that I would define addiction is doing something you don't want to do, or that you do want to do and not being able to stop, that has compulsivity attached to it and that has negative consequences attached to it. Certainly most people have something that is their thing, and most people have a vice, and it's very rare that, I mean, if you look at the thing that is most interesting to me today, I used to do drugs, and so when I quit doing drugs, something that helped, though, is when I removed myself from the environment, I started working out and exercising for the first time really in my life. And then I met someone there who actually ran a mental hospital, and I got a job as a mental health tech. And so when I went to this hospital, I used to drive the patients to AA meetings and NA meetings and CA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and I would sit in on these meetings, never realizing later in life how instrumental that would be to
that's interesting.
now I quit doing the drugs, but my core addiction, which I didn't realize then, was sex addiction. And so later in life, that manifested in pain for sex, because I wired it back to when I used to get paid when I was molested as a kid to not say anything. It wired in my mind that sex is bad, sex is dirty unless you pay for it. And what sexual addiction is an intimacy disorder. And the way that I would define intimacy, this is not my definition, it was given to me by just a brilliant guy who literally sponsors people that have sexual addictions, because sexual addiction is really an intimacy disorder. Sex addiction sounds, I've met amazing, caring, wonderful human beings, men and women, that are sex addicts. But if you hear sex addict, they think, oh, they're just a pervert or they're abusive. And that's not necessarily the case. All addicts, on all levels, when they're modern in addiction, they lie, they cheat, they steal, they do bad things. So I'm not making excuses for bad behavior here. What I'm saying is that the cause of it. So intimacy is a mutual exploration of a shared safe place. Abuse is anything that takes away the safe place. And addictions are what we do to make ourselves feel good when we don't have a safe place. So people that are doing something addictively, they don't feel safe in the world. They could be the strongest motherfucker on the planet. They could control companies, but they could be out of control internally. So it's this inability to connect. It is a connection disorder. And so for me, the things that made the pain go away were sexual experiences. But the problem is, it would always lead to more guilt and more shame. And when you are an addict, you go through.
You never get enough of it, right?
Yeah, like I have a friend named Pat Carnes, who's literally the top sex addiction doctor in the world. If someone types in my name and Pat Carnes, you can watch a whole interview on YouTube about sexual addiction that I did years ago. And there's like 20 million sex addicts in the United States. So to answer your question, how many? It depends on, because there's so many different addictions, but there's millions. Let me put it that way.
I can tell you how many Spartan addicts there are. There's a lot.
How many are there?
There's millions.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, it's probably a wonderful outlet.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Superbeats Heart Chews. As we age, fatigue and lack of endurance, it's not something we can fix with more and more caffeine. Here's a new way to start your day. Superbeats Heart Chews. They're a tasty treat. They give you the energy you need, and they're good for you. No more afternoon coffee or energy drinks. And don't fall for the idea that candy would be a quick pick-me-up. Add 2 delicious plant-based Super Beets Heart Chews to your morning routine, and you'll be promoting heart-healthy energy for your day. No caffeine crash. Because Super Beets Heart Chews' unique, clinically researched grapeseed extract promotes heart-healthy energy and normal blood pressure as part of a healthy lifestyle. In fact, the grapeseed extract used in Super Beets Heart Chews has been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective at supporting normal blood pressure as a healthy lifestyle alone. So do more for your heart and treat yourself with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get free shipping and returns, a 90-day money-back guarantee, and right now for Spartan Up listeners, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeets.com/Spartan. That's superbeets.com/Spartan. Ray Morvan has been through a lot. He and Colonel Nye met up on the sidelines of the death race in Pittsfield, Vermont, to hear Ray's story of addiction and recovery. At the end of this episode, please leave a comment. Let us know, what are the through lines? What are the commonalities that you heard in these 3 stories? And where do you find hope in preventing and recovering from addiction?
You haven't always been this guy as far as upstanding banker, if you will. Mm-hmm. And you've had some issues in your past with drug and some addictions and everything. What can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how you got through that and the lessons that you learned from Spartan to help you fight that?
Sure, I'd love to. I think it's a major issue in today's society. I was an alcoholic and an addict, and I own that. And I'm not ashamed of that, because it's how my journey got me here today. When I first came out of rehab in 2009, I went to Hazleton in Minnesota. I found this race just by chance on the website, the Death Race in 2009. That was my first one. And I used that to say, okay, I need to challenge myself. I need to find something that I can figure out how to stay off the drugs and alcohol. And that first race got me hooked on really being fit and changing my diet. But more importantly, and I go back to the figuring it out. And what I figured out here is that I can be by myself in my head and not have to numb that up with alcohol or opiates, to face my obstacles, to keep moving forward, because life gets better. And even being out here in these mountains on a daily basis, even if it's 5 below zero, it will get better for you. I did struggle again a few years later, even though, and I'm going to be honest here, I'm going to throw it out on the table. I was clean on alcohol, but I really never gave up the opiates. And I spent 5 years fighting that opiate addiction up until just a couple of years ago. And a lot of people don't know that. And I'm ashamed of that a little bit, but it's a true story, because opiates are hard to break in this world right now. And coming back into doing all these death races just kept making me realize that I can do anything I put my mind to, and figuring out how to do it, and realizing that my path is a little bit different than others, but we're all on the same journey, and finding people to surround ourselves of like minds. And that's what I really figured out, is that you just have to get out here and put yourself out here and make it happen.
So it's interesting, because you talk about that you use the race to kind of focus yourself, but then you also talk about we're on a like journey. So there's a community aspect as well. So you take power, if you will, from those others around you. As you push through this mountain and you're on that journey and that death race, you've got people to your left and to your right who are pushing themselves as well. But do they feed you as well? Do they kind of give you the energy to...
They sure do. The people out here are so inspiring. They keep me going, help me become a better person by seeing some of the amazing things that, better athletes than I, weaker athletes than I, they're all out here giving 100%. And that motivated me to say there's something better for my life. There's something better I can do for my children and for myself. And to put the drug and alcohol down and focus on helping others through service and community. But the community here at Spartan is one that I am loyal to the end, because it's saved my life.
Thanks for listening to this classic episode of Spartan Up Podcast. We want you to drive yourself to success every day, but we know many of you are taking on new challenges, especially at this time of the year. And without the right mindset, it's easy to let those new challenges, those new promises fall by the wayside. Stick with us. Subscribe to the podcast. Listen to Spartan Up. We're here 3 days a week to motivate you, to inspire you, to bring you new techniques. We are your virtual partner in resilience, here to stand at your side as you take on new challenges. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Superbeats Heart Chews. Right now, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeats.com/Spartan.